Hello everyone, welcome to another reading. We're doing a reading this time of a pasta called The Puppetmaster's Regime. And this is a story that was once again suggested by one of my patrons on Patreon. So this one is for you, King. Now, according to the message he sent me, this was a pasta that apparently he thought was pretty good when he first read it a while ago, but he hasn't read it since, I think. So, hey, this might be good. It has Pasta of the Month on it. Not that that means anything, ever since, fucking I hate you. But there's potential for quality. So yeah, I'm not going to be going into this one immediately thinking it's going to be awful like I did with Ed, Edd n Eddy Lost Episode or SpongeCry.avi. So hopefully we get a decent story out of this. Or hopefully we get a really bad and funny story out of this. Either way, I think we're all winners here. So let's get started. This is The Puppetmaster's Regime. Have you ever heard of the musical The Puppetmaster's Regime? No. Most likely you haven't. Well, there you go. So it's read in my mind. In fact, most die-hard theater lovers are often unfamiliar with this little production. It was a 1934 stage musical written by anonymous authors of the music, lyrics, and book. It starred upcoming performers. I think you're supposed to say up and coming, maybe? Upcoming performers such as Timmy Cutie Pie Wright. You poor bastard. What an unfortunate nickname. I mean, this was the 30s. You had like Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd, Cutie Pie Wright. It fits, actually. It's pretty good. Sally Wilkes, Henry Gregory, as well as many others. I'm sure these are actually real people, but you know what? I'll check that. I'll actually check that. Maybe not. Okay, these aren't real people. Never mind. At the time, it was the most expensive show to date. It was said to be the biggest, most spectacular stage show to San Francisco and back. The writing style is kind of weird here. I don't know if it's just like old-fashioned or something, but it's kind of weird. I feel like I'm tripping over my words, but it's just that's how it's written. But it doesn't seem grammatically incorrect. I don't know, that's weird to me. From the Testament of Tyler Warwick, 1901 to 1983. I guess these are just like people's thoughts on the show, I guess. I went to see the show about a week after I turned 33. The ticket was a gift from my sister who knew how much I loved the theater. I remember the signs. They were huge and rather gaudy. Oh, and the playbill. It was just a single red dot with a doll-like face on it. It seemed a bit melancholy for what I assumed was to be a musical comedy, but I didn't pay much attention. I was going to a Broadway show. Okay, the format here, with these testaments here, is reminding me a bit of Candle Cove, which I'm okay with. That works for me. But there wasn't really much segue in between this little opening here to these testaments. Like it's not really clear who the author is supposed to be in relation to this. Like maybe they're just a theater historian. I don't know. Anyway, from the Testament of Georgina Long. I'm not gonna bother with the dates anymore. The cast was made completely of new people. Young children and adults alike who were longing to get back on stage after vaudeville became old news. It was quite charming, really. But I did take a bit of notice to that odd little playbill. All the playwrights and lyricists and everyone were all unnamed. They were all anonymous, from the hacker group 4chan.
Do we even know who is this 4chan?
And that design. It was a little red drop with a peculiar little face in it. Not even a title, just that little red dot. I had come to New York with my parents on an impromptu vacation after my grandmother had died. A Broadway musical seemed just like what we needed. Yeah, they all just kind of end, don't they? All these testaments. Like, I'm scrolling down a little just looking at the names because thankfully they're in bold, and they don't even repeat. So it's not like they continue afterwards. So that's just kind of weird to me. From the Testament of Carl Hannigan. I do recall most of the first act. Then again, who could forget? The story was a little hard to follow at first. So's this one, honestly. There was a little boy who lived in a puppet shop, or maybe he lived down the street. No, he worked in the puppet shop, but he was homeless, so they provided him with a home there. Okay, I do like I do like, again, much like in Candle Cove, how he's misremembering certain details, so it's not like he has perfect omnipotence of all the events that are going on here. The kid's name was Mortim, something weird. Oh yes, it was Moritium. No, Moritor, yes. Anyways, Moritor's employer was this old man named Mr. Obcasaur? That sounds like a dinosaur, or a Pokemon. Obcasaur, I choose you! Use your Thunderbolt attack! It's a dinosaur Pokemon that uses Thunderbolt. Game Freak, put me on the design team, put Obcasaur in the game. I remember his name because his character was unimaginably unsettling, bouncing all around, and getting angry, and the little boy. I think that is supposed to be at. I feel like that and is supposed to be an at. Pasta of the month. All while keeping this nasal, gigglish voice. Anyhow, the production opened to more. These names are so weird. Opened to Mortar and the odd fellow getting into an argument over the boy not doing his work. Then two of them sang this peculiar number about puppets. It wasn't a normal song, or at least the musicality wasn't normal. This is written so strangely. I mean, I get that these are testaments from people, like from the 1930s and all, but I don't know, I don't feel like that's what's so weird about it. I don't know. One of the tags at the top is weird, so maybe this is what they were talking about. I don't know. The lyrics were very enchanting, and the music did this odd flowing thing about the room. Instruments would get very quiet without losing any power to it. Maybe it was just the acoustics. I'm most likely explaining it all wrong. Okay, at least he's acknowledging that he can't articulate it very well. Oh well. But in time, we got used to it, and the show progressed. From the testament of Gabriel Johnston, this youngster, Moritor, something like that, was quite insecure about his stay in the puppet shop. Very paranoid that his boss would throw him out. I was an aspiring lyricist at the time, and I'd done the lyrics to a few original community theater projects, so I was fascinated with the wording in these songs. I'm a bit fascinated with the wording in this story. It's weird to me. I scribbled down a few lyrics after I'd went home. Unless I'm remembering wrong, the little puppet shop boy and Mr. Ob something. Hey, it's Obsicor. Obcasaur. Obcasaur. Fuck! I don't blame you for getting it wrong. Never mind. Had an introductory duet, and then Moritor went off and had a short lament in a different, much more somber tune. Okay, I think these next 4 lines are supposed to be lyrics, but only the first of the 4 lines is italicized. So, I mean, that's more of a formatting issue than anything, but still. If I stay and do everything right, I can live in the day and stay clear of the night. Out there in the night, in the dark, there's a world of lies. I can hear them whisper, and sometimes I can see their eyes. The eyes comment confused me for a moment. Wait, that confused you? I mean, you assumed that lies was wise. What is wise even? Like there's a world of questions? That seems weird to me. I don't know why you'd assume that. It seemed as though the number was unnecessarily tragic and poorly situated within the show, but it was a minor quibble. Okay, these fucking names are getting ridiculous. Now, Moritor had a girlfriend named Trahunt and a boyfriend named Adolbit. These aren't names. These aren't even names from like Harry Potter or Star Wars or something. These aren't names. Lord of the Rings. Come on. After interrupting the final note in his lament, they all gushed about how much they loved puppets, but they couldn't afford one from Moritor's guardian shop. Okay, there's a period there, but then what follows is a lowercase and. And I know you're not supposed to start a sentence off with and. I know that. So maybe that's supposed to be a comma? I don't know. And so they transitioned into this vibrant little song about joining forced, guessing that's supposed to be forces, proofread. Okay, at this point I was being forgiving, but at a certain point proofread. About joining forced to raise money so they could afford to build their own puppet. After this, the 3 all headed for school, and the story took a sharp turn in a different direction, after several attempts to begin again. Okay, that's just there in parentheses for some reason. I'm guessing he had to start his story over again a few times. I don't know. Now they had this really nasty teacher or headmistress named Madame Repario. That's a Harry Potter spell, I'm pretty sure. They're not names from Harry Potter, they're like spells from Harry Potter. Adolbit, Repario, Mortar. You could see Harry Potter like waving a wand and saying that.
Just Villicus Abacus! Inspector Patronus! Aphanicus! Orvunicus Petificonis! Amphicalicus! Undulifus!
Or something like that. They had a reprise of the song from before, and she overheard them. And at first her remarks about the children's fantasies were somewhat comical, but then the light fixed on her and she sang this heartbreaking little song. What the song was about was up for interpretation. It was, but it's not now? Is that what you mean by that? It was somewhat about love, but it had all these strange puppet metaphors. Well, the play is about puppets. The only lyric that stayed with me is, "Stroll through the wood cracks, show them your pains, the hole in your throat and the strings in your veins." Creepy. I'll give you that. The imagery of strings in veins is creepy. But maybe that's just because I have a weird thing about veins. Like that part in Jojo Part 4 where Kira has to like blow up one of his own veins to keep air from going into his heart. Yeah, that creeped me out. The whole stray cat fight creeped me out. Like blowing off her toenail and blowing air into his fucking vein. It's creepy. It's very creepy. Gives me the heebie-jeebies. Boy, we're not even close to being done, are we? Then she just went on this little breakdown. I assumed it was a poorly conceived character trait. She started singing off-key and went to beat one of the kids. Okay. The curtain fell and there was a scuffle heard off stage. People whispered to each other, but a rising new orchestra piece silenced us. The curtain rose again and we were right outside the puppet shop. From the testament of Lewis Roberts. See, I don't know why it's from the testament of so many different people. Like with Candle Cove it made sense. But here it's all just a bunch of people like different people telling like the next part of the same story. It's just different people coming in to tell sequential parts of the same story. Mortar and his friends went into the town and sang a song about selling dolls, I think it was. Because the little girl made dolls in her spare time and she had to sell them. I remember those strange background characters. The company was so absolutely monotonous. They all wore some form of dark clothing and each of them were very, very tall. I feel like that should be was. Each of them was very, very tall. Maybe I'm wrong there. I can remember how they all had their faces covered up by hair or hats or veils. None of them spoke. None of them even sang during the course of the show. They just walked in perfectly straight lines, as if they weren't even part of the production. Anyways, this strange song about buying dolls, it had absolutely no life. But for some reason, these children were putting their all into it. I could see the pain in their faces as they hit those high notes. And something else. As the lyrics went on, they seemed to get a little... It is so hard to explain. They all looked like they were hurting a little. Well, you did just describe pain on their face. They looked so pale and nervous all of a sudden. Coming from a stage family, I convinced myself it was only stage fright, but it still made me just a tiny bit anxious. Next, from the testament of Carrie Laurie, a little-known mother of Hugh Laurie, the famous actor. The kids all got their money from this strange man in cloak, guessing that's in a cloak, who sang a simple little tune. I still remember the lyrics. Once again, we only have the first of 4 lines italicized for what are supposed to be lyrics. Despite the fall of rain, little kitties, everyone needs a little song. Wooden dolls give you pain, little kitties. Go on, little kitties, run along. And to clarify, that's not me saying kitties, as in like tiny cats. That's kiddies with 2 D's, not 2 T's. His character was never really explained, but I remember how truly gripping the melody was. So haunting. It got you right there in the gut. Even the little kid actors seemed a bit unsettled by the new turn of the show. They all kept stuttering over their lines as they spoke and sang, and then a light bulb over the stage went out. Everyone kind of gasped, and one man, I think, even laughed. The noise it made really spoke to the little girl, Little Miss What's-Her-Name. You could have just said the little girl. All the names were so very strange. Okay, that's a fair point. All I know is that light bulb had gone out, a light bulb, and proofread. That's and, not and. And the actors were stumbling across the stage, and the whole thing looked like a terrible flop. When the children re-entered the puppet shop, they presented Mr. Obcassor with the puppet pieces they'd acquired when the audience wasn't looking, singing a braggedy sort of chant, we done, diddy diddy done did it. What is this play? Like, a lot of these events just seem kind of random, if I'm being honest. It was obnoxious, but thankfully brief. After that, the light fixed on Moritor, and he began another tune. The song was a dud, and all I remember was that he flubbed the last line. Aw, poor kid. No, you know that none of the other little kid stage actors let him live that down. He's like the little Jake Lloyd of 1930s theater.
Peruska?
The lyric had something to do with the final stroke of light, or some sort of long-winded moon-based metaphor. All I know is that he forgot the words, and all that could be heard in that theater was the sounds of car horns outside the building. The boy, he didn't seem shocked or embarrassed or nothing. Okay, that's grammatically incorrect, but someone could say that, so you could just say that's a dialect thing. I'm fine with that. But his posture improved out of the blue and the orchestra stopped. He projected half the word sorry, then suddenly he burst forth in wordless vocalization. The music resumed and the other characters began to join him. So, after that bulb went out, the whole set started falling apart. We, the audience, tried our best to ignore it, but it was near impossible. I saw 2 sets of very angry attendees get up and leave. The set piece for the puppet shop screeched its way onto the stage, and we could see in the far back the paper sky background falling down. This is a shit show. These people must feel bad for spending money on this. The lights went dim in what we assumed was an attempt to hide the malfunctioning set pieces. The kids, with the help of an oddly monotonous Mr. Obcassor, finally getting it right, constructed the puppet, and this strange song played. To this day, I don't know what they were saying. It sounded vaguely like Latin, but I went on to study Latin in college the next year and found that guess to come out flat. I remember how it enchanted me, though. It enchanted all of us. We began to feel this thing course through us. I remember a few people around us who were humming in an attempt to rid themselves of the sound, and I could hear people in the front rows crying out in what sounded like pain. Well, that's neat. That's a neat concept. The actors themselves sounded as though they were about to pass out at any moment. They were doing this odd sort of ballet, and they were tripping all over themselves. And a few more lights started flashing and breaking. We all sat and waited for the song to end when, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I can't. Okay, apparently it was so horrible, this guy can't even talk about it. Oh, and this next testament's real short. From the Testament of George Frank. Holy shit, this guy lived 100 years. Good on you, George. The lights were going on and off at random, and we were all praying the damn song would end soon. It had this force going with it. It was sucking us in. We could feel it. The little kids and the puppet man were dancing all around when, well, you see, I really thought I could do it. I thought I could do it. I was right there in the 5th row, so I saw, but I can't. Yeah, that's 2 people in a row. And what happened was so horrible that these people can't even talk about it. I think this is the last one. From the Testament of Carol and Mark. Oh, last guy lived to be 100. This chick only lived to be 48. The lighting was completely out of control. It was a mess. And that song, it was awful. But something about it, it was powerful. It had a force. I watched intently as the dancers began to skip around, and I thought they were the lights. Okay, quotation marks are ending here, so I'm guessing this is no longer the Testament, but it's actually like the author again. The actual events of the final scene of Act 1 of the Puppetmaster's regime have been, because it's events, pluralized, have been up for debate for many years. Not many people are willing to speak out about what happened on stage during those final moments. Many believe that there is no actual record of an interview with somebody who is willing to tell the story. This is not true, as one testament survives from a Billy Prescott, who was only 6 at the time of the show. At such a young age, one might assume he was less affected by what he recalls happening. I was just a kid, so I don't remember much. All I can vaguely recall is that song. It was giving me a headache. I turned to my father to ask him if we could leave, when suddenly I saw the stage illuminate with this bright red light. Okay, there's red. The music stopped as one instrument after another died out, and I swear I heard pounding underneath the stage. Okay, that's weird. Everyone was questioning what was happening, even the actors. I remember that teacher lady being pushed through the door of the shop, and then everyone else came flying in from off stage, toppling on top of each other like ragdolls. There were people who didn't fit the design scheme of the production. Stage hands and technical workers, I assume now. I remember the little girl screamed at the audience, then ran behind the shopkeeper while other actors continued singing. A few people started crying right there on stage when suddenly this curtain came forward. It's hard to describe what it looked like. It was a clear plastic wall and it came down from above. Several years later I saw Carrie the musical on Broadway during one of its few runs. That thing that came down on the prom goers when Carrie was using the laser lights to kill everyone. It was just like that. A bunch of set pieces from earlier scenes came down on the sides of the stage, trapping all of the actors in the center. Then chaos erupted. The actors stopped singing and were pounding on the plastic wall. Then for some reason they began to back away, as if some unseen assailants were coming towards them. They fled to the back of the stage, all except the little boy. The little boy who hadn't stopped singing. Then, amid all that screaming and crying and shouting, the curtain flew out and everything was in silence. Due to that odd abruptness, the audience thought it was just a horrible ending to a terrible musical. We were about to get up when suddenly the curtain opened up again, revealing the stationary plastic wall upon which was a single light fixed on the little boy Moritor. He had clawed his way through the plastic wall. Okay, somehow. We could see the blood on his hands, but the way he looked was... there were strings attached to every part of his body. We could... oh, that's gross. We could all see his stomach, or lack of, anyway. Yeah, that's gross. It was like somebody had put a huge... okay, this is gross, but this imagery is really funny. It was like somebody had put a huge ice cream scooper in his belly. I understand it's a little child and his organs are missing, but that imagery is very funny to me. He was sobbing all over the stage, twitching and swinging around. It was a sight so unnatural looking, so painful and twisted and wrong. Even now I can't seem to wrap my head around how, but... And so everyone looked at him, not knowing what to do. And then he spoke. Help me, please help me, was all I could make out. And then he vomited and suddenly collapsed. The plastic wall lifted and lights all came on. We saw the rest of them. They were all dead. Every one of them looked exactly like the little boy. Everyone had those strings attached, and we watched as all of them, even the little boy, as their strings were pulled on. Wait, we watched as all of them, as their strings were pulled on. Okay, whatever. Just proofread. Their lifeless bodies rose on cue, and they bowed. However, we cannot be certain that this is a credible account, but unfortunately it's all we have to work with. The Puppetmaster's regime sparked horrible debate among the theater companies. Several audience members had to be treated as special therapy for years to come, and the show itself was covered up by the police. Okay. For years to come, the theater company, as well as the police department, who have never managed to solve the gruesome murders of the cast and crew of the show, denied that the play ever existed, just like the rape of Nanking. However, in recent years, the story has resurfaced, sparking much new debate on the subject. The theater that housed the musical still refuses to acknowledge the show's existence, and most theater historians know nothing about the show in general. To this day, the identities of the anonymous lyric and music writers are unknown, and to our knowledge, all recordings of the songs and police reports have been destroyed. However, through certain pieces of historical documentation, we can gather a bit of information on the production. The show itself had its first workshop in London in 1928. One of the songs, Get a Puppet, was recorded with vocals by 12-year-old Garris Creeley. However, this recording has been lost, but is supposedly available in the black market of the internet? What? Come on. You can just say the deep web, the black market of the internet. Come on. Other than that, no official records were ever made. Some ancient accounts say that an illegal audio taping of the final scene of Act 1 was recorded from backstage, but we cannot be certain that this is anything but a rumor. They had tech like that in 34? I mean, illegal audio taping. I mean, how long were they still using records for? That's what they would have had to fucking record that on. Jesus. As for any official memorabilia, very little of anything has survived. Until her death in 1994, theatrical historian Gladys Masters kept 2 large-scale posters, which she displayed at charity events, but these have since disappeared. Early costumes by Alice Lively, who had been the costume designer on Puppetmaster until she quit after payment disputes, are on display at the Piccadilly Theatrical Museum in Dover, England. I sincerely doubt that, but I'll take your word for it. Other than that, playbills from its premiere night were given out, but most audience members destroyed their copies after seeing the show. Legend has it around 10 to 20 survive. On another note, over the years the show has grown a small cult fan base, and here recently, an off-brand Broadway revival has been scheduled to premiere soon. And that's the end of the story. Well, first of all, by the title, The Puppet Master's Regime, I was anticipating another OC pasta about some, I don't know, serial killer called the Puppet Master or something. Very pleased that was not the case. Also, very interesting premise with lost media in theater. Like, that is something I have not seen before. That's very interesting. As for the story itself, it wasn't horrible. I don't even think it was all that bad. A lot of stuff was a bit random. I think the testaments from all the different people ended up being a little pointless. Again, proofread. For the love of God, please proofread. Yeah, it certainly wasn't particularly funny. And there were some decent moments of creepiness. I mean, the ending was a bit disappointing. Because it's just like everyone died. And there was blood everywhere and it was horrible. I mean, at least the reactions of some of the people where they can't even describe it because they're so disgusted by it. Yeah, that's pretty realistic. But I don't know, I feel like I had enough going for it originally that you didn't really have to go for the everyone dies blood and gore ending. That's just how I feel. But other than that, it was alright. I'll give this a solid alright. I mean, and there are a couple of little silly things. Again, ice cream scooper and black market of the internet. Those are silly. Those were funny. But there weren't enough funny moments to make this, like, that bad, I think. It's just kind of whatever. But I feel like a lot of it is kind of, it's not really necessary. There's just a lot of plotting that doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, most of what they're talking about is just like, oh, it was puppet related. Oh, I wonder what the big twist at the end is going to be when they're all like turned into puppets or whatever. And it's just, yeah, it had a really, actually pretty good atmosphere for the majority of it. But the ending was just like, everyone died. Whatever. They all became puppets. Did you see it coming? Oh well. But yeah, it wasn't terrible. Do I think it deserves Pasta of the Month? Nah. Nah, not really. But haven't seen too many better recommendations that have been on the wiki. So yeah, that was the Puppet Master's Regime. Let's read some comments. Oh, this is a good one. The beginning was very typical, but I have promised myself to always finish what I start. So I continued reading, and I can't say I regret it. This creepypasta's gore impressed me a lot. As we all know, creepypastas tend to have pointless and ineptly described gore, but this gore was well placed. Impressive. Impressive! Side effects, slight dizziness, rating 6 out of 10. It's just like, oh, You know, you know, creepypastas, they're really not good until they have lots of gore in them. But it's gotta be tasteful gore, you know what I mean? Oh, here's a good one. Even me got dizzy while reading it for some reason. Honestly, this was kind of a letdown considering the premise. This had the potential to be an actually scary creepypasta. Instead of, oh my god, boy has no stomach, oh my god, it's so scary. The build-up was a classic example of horror with a good story, if such a thing exists, which was ruined by an idea ripped straight out of Lavender Town Syndrome and then tops it off with some mindless gore. This should join the likes of Jeff the Killer and Slenderman, a true classic. Let's not say things we can't take back in terms of Jeff the Killer. Let's not say things we can't take back. I will say, yes, the ending left me very disappointed. I wanted more than that. That would be like my first thought as an author. Would just be like, okay, if I can't think of anything else by the time I'm done writing this, that's what I'll do for it. Oh, here's another self-made rating system. It could do without the gore, though the way it progressed was really great. Just, yeah, it dropped off a bit at the end. 13 out of 15. Like, come on. Come on, guy. Or girl, I don't fucking know. Oh boy, Hank Hill over here has a long comment. This is my problem with this story. Personally, I'm a bit surprised this made it to Pasta of the Month with how typically bleh it is. This first section, while introducing an interesting premise, isn't so much gripping as it is mildly fascinating. I finished reading it less because I had to find out what happens, and more because I'm at work and I've done all my assignments and there's nothing better for me to do than find out what happens. This very clearly is just a formulaic pasta. It follows the same format as every other investigative pasta, which is tragic because with this premise it could have been taken so much further. There's so much creative wiggle room here, it's insane. But instead, it's set up just like Candle Cove, just like every other Lost episode investigative Smile Dog knockoff. Same old, different colored Play-Doh. Very true, I mentioned that earlier, as a matter of fact, that the whole Different Testaments thing was exactly like Candle Cove. I didn't know this was sort of a genre, these investigative types. But honestly, I'm much more okay with this format than I am with the Squidward suicide format. You briefly sort of imply, then directly state sexual abuse of the child. I don't remember that. That must have went right over my fucking head. That concept is so fucking good and can be taken so much further. You have something genuinely shocking, which is saying a lot when it comes right down to it. In this community, we don't get shocked, we don't get surprised. This is something that, had you taken it further, could legitimately have shocked and really put people at ease. But alas, you left it at, yep, little nigga got raped. I don't remember that. Man, it's a good thing I have to listen to these videos like 3 times during editing, because I must have missed that somewhere. Like when I get this video uploaded, I'm just gonna play the same clip like 3 times in a row, where it obviously states that just so it really gets rubbed in what a fucking dumbass I am right now. Then again, I have already forgotten most of the story right after I've read it, which probably isn't the greatest sign of the story. The descriptions here could use some ironing out. It seems to ramble, agreed with that. The narrative reminds me of how a car moves when it blows out one of its tires. It's not smooth, it limps. Some of these descriptions run into each other and distract from each other. Welp, I was sleeping, but I remember this or that. Also, my parents were there, and also I like puppets, but now I don't. What about that song? It was played and presumably was dissonant and made people sick and want to die. What? That right there could also be taken further. The problem I have is that this story could be taken to new highs and generally could make people really uneasy and really make them question themselves. That's what horror as a genre is meant to do, but instead you keep the story huddled in the relative safety for the doorway. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what this guy says, except for the child abuse thing, the sexual abuse. I don't remember that. I completely missed that. Maybe I skipped a paragraph. I don't know. But yeah, thank you, Noothgrush, for really putting that together. You did a great job with that. And then the Bitter Cold says, I was going to review this pasta, but you've already pointed out the main problems with it. To add to what you said, there were also quite a few inconsistencies in the work, like when Moricher vomited even though he had a lack of a stomach. How does one vomit without a stomach? All in all, it wasn't a terrible story, but I've seen much better. It certainly wasn't Pasta of the Month material, and I'm rather disappointed that was chosen over so many other good stories. Oh, and here we got lol skeletons here, actually responding in here. Hey lol skeletons. Remove cupcakes. Remove username 666. Remove Squidward suicide. Thank you. Agreed, I was actually going to disqualify. Oh, by the way, remove 000000000 and remove condemned iPod. Thank you for real this time. Lol Skeleton said, agreed, I was actually going to disqualify this from Pasta of the Month. You can't alter polls once they're set up without resetting them, unfortunately. But I couldn't really think of a valid reason to do so besides mediocre pasta. Oh, and that it was read by Mr. Creepypasta, thus giving it an unfair advantage. This seems to be the author. Hagen is not a cat. And, yeah, he's been responding to a lot of the criticism pretty well, actually. Like I'll just cap it off here. Odd as it seems, I'd like to thank you for articulating the story's weaknesses. Truth be told, I've always been a bit personally disappointed with this one. It took me forever to finally listen to the MCP narration of the revival because, in all honesty, I don't think this is that great either. I certainly don't think it's awful, but I was always pressed for time when I wrote these, so the final product seems a bit rushed. But anyhow, thanks again for your honesty. See, that's how you respond to criticism. That's how you do that. So, overall, wasn't that great a story, but at least the author knows that. But it wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, and it did have some genuinely kind of creepy moments. The patron has also suggested another story that he describes as stupid fun, which I will get to at another date. But until then, this video's gone on long enough, so I'd like to thank you for watching. And if you want to leave your own suggestion for a story, put it in the comments. And if you want me to get to it sometime this year, consider donating just like the guy here did, the king guy did. And that's me, Fishstick. I'll see you next time for the next video. Until next time. I already said next time. Gonna fucking kill myself. Alright, take care everyone.
You raised my hopes and dashed them quite expertly, sir. Bravo!